The first thing you may notice about this video is that there's commentary. Yes, I had a lot more time to make this video than the last one. Specifically, the last one was made in like 2 days, and this one had an entire week to be produced, so I was able to edit it properly and make a script. Of course, I didn't make a script because I'm way too lazy to do that, but I can do this commentary thing because either way, this will feel more organic. Less polished, but more organic, which some people like that. I prefer that. But what I'm playing today is called Backpack Hero, indie game on itch.io, which I've played a few times, as you'll see from my gameplay, because I know few of the items, not a lot of them. It is very fun. There will be a link in the description if you want to play it, or you can just copy the URL that you can see now. Make sure to like and subscribe if you enjoy the video, and now onto the gameplay. The game, to my best description, is similar to a deck building card-based, turn-based thing. It goes based off of energy. There are consumables, weapons, shields. It's actually pretty expansive with what's in it, and it's pretty surprising, especially for indie game. First fighting area is nothing to gawk at, so I'll just skip past it. This area is right after the tutorial, so the enemies aren't too difficult. Most of the fights can be dealt with just a little stabby and a blocky. As you can see, the icons above the enemies' heads determines what they're going to do. None of them are really dangerous or anything. I just like to kill the enemies before they can do anything, so I prioritize the ones that are attacking, which is, smart. After each fight, you get items to choose from, and then you can choose 3 of those said items to go based off of whatever build you want to do. I'm already fairly familiar with the items, so I don't really need to read them too much. Of course, as you can see now, I'm not completely familiar, so I do have to read some of them sometimes. After the fight, I immediately went to a locked door because it has loot behind it, which is just a chest where you get to choose the items, except you're not limited on the amount. Usually you don't get too many good things, but it's still worth going after. That's usually the only reason to have keys, except for a special item that I won't spoil. Most fights aren't special, but I'll still show most of them just so that way you can see what's happening, what loot I get, and, the gameplay. So that way you can see if this game interests you or not. Something I failed to mention earlier is that it does run based off of energy, which is pretty much the only factor that makes you weak. Of course, if you were able to spam the same attack for 3 minutes straight without having any backlash, that probably would be pretty broken. After this fight, I leveled up, and leveling up allows you to choose more spaces to put more equipment in. Pretty self-explanatory. None of the equipment here is that special, but you will see me keep a little bit of it for a little bit of time, just because it's useful and I have no real reason to replace it until later. The question mark above the bee's head means that it's going to give me a curse. A curse I can either just take damage or take it and put me at a severe disadvantage this fight. The other thing is just cowardly, so it runs when the bee is dead. This fight gave me a very valuable piece of equipment. The starter one, which applies 1 regen to myself. It may not seem that special, but once you get 6 or 7 mana stones connected to it, that's 6 or 7 healing per turn reduced by 1 per turn. In small amounts, not that much, but it gets very powerful later on. Out of this next chest, I get an amethyst, which although isn't that strong, it's still pretty good for early game and generally buffing your weapon. It just applies flat damage to anything in the same row as it. For this fight, I decide to attack the cowardly enemy first, because I can out-shield their damage, and because I want that extra experience, so that way I can max out my level faster. Each time you reject a curse, the next curse will do another damage on top of whatever the last curse's damage was. So if the last curse did 6 damage, then this next one would do 7 if you reject it, and then 8. That's why I decided to target the bee first, so that way I wouldn't have to reject the curse and screw me over later on. After the fight, I just level up and put wherever. Then I encounter a very important piece of equipment, which you will see throughout the rest of this gameplay. This wand is really strong. For each connected mana stone, which holds the charge for said wand, the wand gets 1 extra damage. Mana stones are the little blue stones that you're seeing. Essentially what they are is they're like extra energy, but only for magic items that are connected to it. Out of this chest, there's nothing spectacular about it at all. This next fight just shows how weak the wand is early game, by it only doing 1 damage, or 2 damage, I wasn't paying attention. Other than that, there's nothing notable about this fight. Here's the first time we're introduced to the shop, and for lack of better description, the shop is just useless. Anytime you do get something useful, it is very expensive. Onto floor 2, and I immediately go for the fight in front of the question mark, because the question mark provides a special event, which I don't know all of them, but I know there's a gambling one, a plinko one, and a few other. For this fight, I have to take the curse because I'm not able to kill the slime fast enough, so I just decide to take the flat damage and leave it at that. Not that it's too big of a deal, though, because it's not that much damage. The rest of the fight, though, is fairly easy. The only thing notable about this fight is that I get an extra mana stone, which is one more attack and one more damage onto my metal wand. As for the special event, well, it's the Plinko that I mentioned earlier, and although none of these items are exactly special, I just want anything but the curse. This next fight, although is still easy, is a little bit harder than the previous ones because they have an extra ally, which provides team buffs such as team shielding and team healing. Although in this fight, it doesn't really do anything at all. So just another easy combat encounter. Although I did level up from it, which was nice. Another mostly useless shop, but I do buy the boots and reorganize a little bit because if you can't tell, I'm trying to super buff the metal wand. And I'm pretty sure you can see where this build is going. The only thing special about this fight is that I get a little bit of experience and I get an extra mana stone. I then go to the priest who I can't afford anything from. I will call them priests even though the game calls them healers because that's just what they remind me of. This next fight is a mini boss of sorts. I use the few manas that I have for my mana stones to get a little bit of health regeneration, but nothing special about this except this is the first time we see an enemy be able to summon allies for themselves. Next we go on to the first boss fight, which although isn't particularly difficult, you still have to be somewhat cautious with it. Other than its rather large health pool, the only real danger from this enemy is that each time you attack it, it gets one rage, which decays over time but increases its damage. Simply enough, the way I beat him is by keep attacking him, by keeping his damage under my passive shield gains from my equipment. Very straightforward, very easy. After the boss, I'm not sure where to put my stuff for my level up, so I just put it wherever. Nothing special I had in mind, I was just trying to find decent enough positioning for it, but there really wasn't any good spots. After I'm done leveling up, I get to choose from 3 relics, which you get after every boss fight. I get 2 good ones, which is add mana to connected mana stones, and then a percentile increase to damage for whatever adjacent weapon is there. The dumbbell I've had absolutely zero build with being good, and I couldn't see how it would be useful, but you're more than welcome to try it out. After a few seconds of thinking, I go with the mana one instead of the damage one because adding mana every turn, which would be very, very helpful. I decide to unlock the door to the bonus level just because I can, and I think it would be a good idea to show it off. Normally, you'd go to a different level with different enemies and a different layout, but I had the key to unlock the door and figured I should show it off. I don't have a key for this door because I just use it to open the area, but I still figured I should try because I wasn't paying any attention. The first encounter in this area is not easy at all, and what I decide to do is try and take out the one that gives curses, so that way I don't take increasing damage from rejecting curses. Although this time I decide to pull a pro gamer move and actually accept it because what I'm going to do is kill the person that gives me curses, and then, because of what the curse is, use the curse to apply the buff to the healer, which doesn't do any damage. And it also has Cowardly, so it'll run away, which I wasn't thinking of at the time, but it worked out. Other than another mana stone and a luck ring, there was nothing special about the loot here. Although this next fight isn't too difficult, this is where you start to see the wand getting some serious power by almost completely killing the first enemy on the first turn. Other than that, very easy. I was trying to kill the cowardly enemy for the extra experience, but I wasn't able to do it. This time, I get a pretty decent mana stone with 2 charges instead of 1, although it only counts as 1 damage to my wand. And then after another useless shop, and a not-so-good random encounter. And yet another useless shop. I go on to fight a not exactly difficult, but new enemy. The only thing special about these guys is that they have a lot of health and they constantly shield themselves. But attacking them a few times is it makes them no big deal. I skip past the exit to go to another combat encounter, which still isn't anything too special. I was just doing it for the experience to try and get my level up so that way I can get the last little bit of backpack space I need. On to the next fight. There's nothing too terribly special about it except for the fact that I do this. Although not awesome, it's still pretty good to see that I can take out a rather strong enemy in the first turn because of my wand. And I get another mana stone, which is another damage and another charge onto said wand. After a few random unimportant encounters. This next fight is the first time I start to actually struggle because I can't full kill the tanky guys, and I certainly can't kill them quick enough to prevent any serious damage coming my way. Although the damage is not too bad and is reversible, it still wasn't good to take that much damage, especially in a fight like this. Although I do level up and get a decent amount of space from it. And as for the loot pool, still nothing special. But said fight was well worth it because not only do I get an item to increase the damage of my wand, but I also get an item to add 1 vampirism to it, which heals me for 1 and does an extra damage on top of whatever the wand does, which adds a fairly decent amount of power to me. A special thing about conductive items is buffs travel to other conductive items. So say I had another wand that was an attack wand, like the wand I have, then that wand would get the buffs that my current wand is getting. Although, unfortunately, I don't use it this run because it's not that useful to me. Just a cool little unique thing about magic-based builds. This next fight is the same thing as the last one, except I am a lot more powerful. So I no longer need to regenerate because of how much I can attack with my attack wand and how much it heals me for. My damage has also increased a lot just from the last combat alone because of the vampirism affecting both my wand and my club. Although they still get some damage on me, it's nothing that I can't reverse, at least not anymore. I sit here for a few seconds to contemplate if the pearl is worth the risk, and in the end I do decide that it is because that's going to add a very good amount of damage to my wand. Which, although 4 doesn't seem very much, you gotta multiply that 4 by however many mana stones I have, since that's the amount of times I get to attack with said wand. And, well, let's just say that the results speak for themselves. Other than a little bit of extra max health, there's nothing else special on this floor, since the rest of the loot isn't anything that I would ever use. At least not in a run like this, in the position that I'm at. This next boss fight is by far the easiest in the game. Although, if you do your build incorrectly, then it could be slightly difficult, but for the way that I usually build things, it's extremely easy. With the way that I'm set up, I'm able to kill all the minions that the boss spawns because the minions that the boss spawn doesn't have very much health. And I'm able to spam my wand. Although it could be overwhelming if you had a completely different build. So simply enough, what I do is I kill all the minions that the boss spawns and then attack him once, because each time I attack him, he gets a dodge, which after the first attack, I won't be doing any damage. And I simply repeat this process until he's dead. And after the boss fight, I level up and get a decently sized mana stone, which puts me in a good position. Although my build doesn't favor the other 2 relics, they are still pretty decent. But because of how much I get to attack, I'm going to go with the stopwatch. Because if you can't tell, that would be very powerful. Onto the last world, and this area isn't anything dangerous. Especially with how strong I am. I prioritize the guy in the back because he's going to put curses on me, which I can't handle. But if you couldn't tell from what you just watched, I am exceedingly powerful. That isn't even very much to do with the stopwatch at all. And although at this point you're supposed to be powerful, I am stronger than I'm supposed to be, because you're not supposed to be able to one-cycle these guys. Because, of course, they're the last level's minions. And although there are a few that are stronger than this, you'll see that I am just as strong against them as I am against the guys I just killed. The only thing notable about this next fight is that I get another Mana Stone. After once again wiping the floor with enemies that I should not be able to kill this quickly, twice, I level up to the second to last level, which I just put in the most logical spots. I get a very powerful piece of equipment which adds mana to my existing mana stones if they're less than full after each kill. I also get a consumable that does the same thing, but it only does it once and does 6. For the first time, I actually want items out of the shop, which is this whetstone and the pearl. Although I can't afford both, I figured the whetstone would be better since it's a percentage increase to my wand's damage permanently, and the pearl is only an extra 4 damage. Plus, I couldn't really see how I could fit the pearl in, although I might have been able to find some way if I really wanted it. After adding the whetstone's buff to my wand, which at this point is just overkill for these enemies, I proceed to destroy the rest of this floor. Out of the entirety of this next floor, this is the only fight that mattered, and the only reason it does is because it gives me another Mana Stone, and it truly displays how powerful a magic-based build is if you build it correctly. And I replaced my club with a conduit, which just adds 3 extra charges for my wand, although it doesn't increase its damage, unfortunately. And on to the final floor with the final boss fight of the game, excluding the endless mode. It's time to truly test how powerful I am. And I could commentate over this to explain how this build is just God mode, but I'll just let you watch it for yourself because, yeah. If you can't tell from the fact that the boss died on the first turn, and the fact that the game lagged a little bit, you're clearly not supposed to end up this powerful. But like most other games that involve this sort of gameplay, I managed to break it and go with the most overpowered option. This game you can also continue in endless mode, which is why it gives you these items. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe, and have a good day.